We are live. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We hope you stay warm and safe in this cozy winter day. And thank you so much, everybody. And welcome back for another episode. If not now, when? And I'm so excited you are here with us. Because, my friend, today I have someone so special that I would love all of you to meet. And someone even say a legendary. And that is David Karabinos. And my friend, let me tell you a little bit about David. First of all, David is a serial entrepreneur. He has experience launching business using equity, using capital for over 40 years. Oh my God, he's not only served as CEO, but also CIO, CFO, COO, all the C titles you possibly know, he done it. How many people can say that? For the last 2 decades, he has served as an angel investor and LP for venture funds and served as a board member for so many businesses. And today, my friend, he has experience and knowledge over so many topics over the sun, seriously over the chart. Just an interview. Technology, healthcare, finance, and all and above. So with that, my friend, I am just so excited today to have David join us. And thank you so much, David, for being here with us, and welcome to the show.
Well, you are so welcome, Wynn. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show, and I look forward to the conversation.
Of course. So David, tell us, how does all the magic journey get started?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. If I could, let me go back to the beginning of my career, which started roughly 43 years ago. I was trained in the military in technology and software development. Mm-hmm. And I got my GI Bill and used it to get my degree in business and finance. And I combined the two, technology and business, early on, which kind of puts me, I'm in the Bill Gates in terms of carbon dating my career, not quite the success that he has, but combine those two things around the same time that he got started. And I was in corporate America for 20 years, climbing the proverbial ladder, moving from company to company. And I was in technology, but I was on the business side predominantly. I reached my Peter principle in terms of being a technologist fairly early. And I really enjoyed the business side of it. Towards the end of that 20-year first leg of my career, I was a member of a team that ran a $400 million business unit for an IT outsourcing company. It was a great experience, but I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So 23 years ago, I left that world and became one. And I've built 5 companies over that period of time. The first one actually failed. It was in healthcare technology. It was around price transparency for consumers, which was about 2 decades ahead of its time. But the company actually failed, not because of that, but because of the .com bust in 2000. Right, the private capital markets became illiquid, and we starved for cash. So we had to sell the assets of the company. So it was not a successful exit, but I learned a lot from it, and I applied it to 2 other companies and had successful exits that I would call singles in baseball terms. But in 2006, I had a very successful exit. I would call it a home run. And we built a $100 million company, and we sold it. And then I retired for the first time and became a limited partner in several venture funds. And I did direct angel investing. I was a part of a very active angel group. I was chairman of the board of a technology incubator here in North Alabama, the largest one, for a number of years. Invested in some of those companies, helped them scale, grow, exit. So I've been in the venture capital and the startup ecosystems for a couple of decades now.
Wow.
In 2009, I decided to come off the bench and operate one last time as an operator. So I took over a digital health consultancy as the CEO, and I ran it for 10 years, and a very successful company. So I've been in technology all my career, but I've been in healthcare for about half of that. We are selling the company right now, actually. But about a year ago, I stepped off as the CEO, and now in my second retirement, I'm advising startups and early stage companies, helping them raise capital, M&A, product strategy, and growth strategy. So I've kind of come full circle in my career, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying it.
Wow, David. Wow. Thank you so much taking your time to, give us a beautiful view about your career in a nutshell. And I know there's so many incredible stories underneath every single piece of it. And I want to touch base on one thing that you mentioned, that your first part of your career was in corporate world for 20 years. And then you decided to become an entrepreneur. I was wondering, number one, do you always know you want to be an entrepreneur? And that must be a different shift from the corporate world to entrepreneur, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about the story there?
It's very different, absolutely. And being in both worlds for half of my career, both times or equally, I appreciate the opportunities with each and the challenges with each. And I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but it's not easy to make the transition one way or the other. If you're an entrepreneur from right out of school or just as your first jobs, you're going to struggle going into the corporate world. Large enterprise corporations where the internal stakeholders and politics are very complicated. You have to be very patient. You don't have that sense of urgency about anything. No one does, it seems like. And you have to get consensus on decisions. And as an entrepreneur, that will just drive you nuts. But I was successful in both for different reasons. I don't think I would have the patience today at this leg of my career of going back into the corporate world and experiencing that. But I enjoyed them both. It's when you make the transition, you have to know willingly what you're going into. For example, when I left the corporate world, I was right around 40 years old. My wife and I had been married 20 years. We tried to have children all during that period and were unsuccessful. We went through 6 intrauterine inseminations and 2 in vitros unsuccessfully. And we gave up. And I was about to take a job to run sales overseas for my company, which meant I would be on the road all the time. And I was negotiating the package for this job, which was a great career opportunity. And I was out of town. And I called my wife just in the afternoon to touch base with her, told her I was going to be home that night. And she said, well, I'm going to be late. I just thought I'd tell you. And I thought she meant late to a meeting because she worked. And she said, no, late. And I'd never heard those words before. So I took a deep breath and I said, okay, well, I'm not taking this job if we're pregnant. So let's get a test and I'll see you tonight. So when I got home, next to the bed was the EPT test. And that's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm blurry eyed. So I looked at it and it was positive. So the next morning at 6:30, we woke up and I said, we need to go into our fertility clinic and we need a test. I need a picture. And so we went in and the whole fertility clinic was really excited because it was a positive test. And I didn't take that job. I did not want to miss her pregnancy in the first year of that. And so it was a 2-year commitment for the role. So I turned the job down. And that's when I decided, you know what, I need more control over my destiny. And as an entrepreneur, I can get that control. I will take on the risk to get the control. And so that's when I plotted my exit from corporate America. And within 6 months, I was out doing my own thing. And we had a little baby on the way. So
let me comment on that. First of all, wow, what a beautiful stories. And I just love like that moment of, your wife pregnancy really kind of show you the direction that you are heading to. Of course, decades later, you are so successful. And of course, I felt that almost a sign to lead you to, who you always meant to become. And I have a quick question, because for folks who are maybe do that similar transition, right? you are a family man, you are the father that moment that your wife is pregnant, yet you are leaving a stable job to start something that new, have zero guarantee, and you're not done it before that moment. How could you make that make that jump and knowing that's the best for not only you but your entire family? How do you have that confidence? Do you always knew you meant to be an entrepreneur?
Well, if you don't mind, let me go back to the even farther back, and I think this story will provide some context.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 15 years old, I left home.
Mm-hmm.
My parents unfortunately divorced, and my older brother went off to Vietnam. My second oldest brother went off to Texas, and there were 7 of us, by the way. And
Wow.
and I left home, and have been on my own ever since. And I continued to go to school. I had 3 jobs. I had really strong work ethic, and I just had to learn how to make things happen for me. And so I did that for 5 years before meeting my wife, and we got married, and we've been married now for 44 years. But that process of being on your own and wanting to live a good life, and not just living on the street, or not just getting by, but actually wanting to succeed, both in terms of your personal well-being, as intellectually, culturally, accomplishments. Those 5 years just cemented all of that, what I wanted out of life, and I was successful. I was during that period of time, but I didn't have any money, so I decided to go into the military. This is right towards the end of Vietnam, to get my GI Bill, to be able to go to college and get a degree. And I followed that pathway for the next 5 years and achieved those objectives. Now I go from being in the military and blue collar to white collar, wearing a white shirt and a tie for the next 20 years, chasing. So I brought all of that work ethic and those goals and values to my new life in corporate America. I just worked really hard at it.
Wow. But that's not scare you to go into this entrepreneur world? Yeah, you have hard work ethic, but that's a world you've never done it before at that point.
It's interesting. I've never been afraid of change. I seek change. I've always sought change. I've always felt like that was a positive attribute, and I've never feared change. I've had fears before. I've jumped out of airplanes. I've perfectly good airplanes. I've scuba dived. I'm a scuba diver, master diver, and I've been down to 150, 155 feet. I've been in caves underwater, and I've been in claustrophobic situations, down deep in wreck dives, for example. And fear is a very natural thing under those circumstances, but you cannot let it get a hold of you, because that will be the end. So controlling the fear, being not afraid of change, actually seeking change. So when I made the change from corporate America to becoming an entrepreneur, I didn't fear it. I sought it. And the reason why is, over that 20-year period, I had these side projects of being an entrepreneur, testing my theories out about how to build a business plan and build a little small business. So I did that several times during that first leg of my career. So I tested the waters. So when I really made the jump, I was ready.
Wow, David, that is incredible. Talking about no fear, you are fearless. Like, not only jumping from the perfect airplane, but going to under 150 feet. Well, I just listened to skydiving. That was like maybe 5 feet. I was almost freaked out. That is incredible. And oh my God, you're just someone I really, really admire, and just, Incredible. So now I want to ask you about, the entrepreneur journey, right? You talk about now this moment, you and your family on this different trajectory. You want to in charge of what you do and make an impact. You're going to an entrepreneur world. And you mentioned that before you've done some side project, but you never actually folded into entrepreneurs. I'm curious, is there any surprise you? Now you really jump in the both feet, like, okay, now this is it. Is there any surprise you on the journey?
Did I surprise myself?
Yes, anything that surprised you about being an entrepreneur, that things that you have not thought before, things maybe surprise you.
I would, yes, I was surprised. I'll give you some examples of surprises, but I'll tell you what the way I went about that transition. Mm-hmm. So, for example, becoming an entrepreneur, being in corporate America, I had no clue about raising capital, venture capital. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know. I didn't have network. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have anything. Mm-hmm. So when I first jumped out into that world and started my first company, I did it with my own money, like most first-time founders do. Mortgaged the house, dipped into the 401k. Wow. I did everything that you typically do, and you want to do it in a measured way, which I did. Mm-hmm. But very quickly, I just immersed myself into the venture capital world. Mm-hmm. How do you write really a business plan, not for a business unit in corporate America, but for a startup that needs to go raise $1 million, right? Or 500,000 seed capital. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I immersed myself in that, reading, talking to people, networking, for really a year, building financial models and business plans and doing market research and testing all my ideas out, and generating money at the same time, income. So what I did was I was providing consulting services to feed the family. Got it. But I was simultaneously building the business plan for the NewCo, for the company. Mm-hmm. And so that's really a pretty good model that people should consider when they jump out of the corporate world and go into the startup world. Is you need to kind of do both simultaneously, which means you're working a lot of hours, but that's okay. That's what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So what I was trying to do during that first year is I was trying to fill the gaps of knowledge that I didn't have. Right. And fill the gaps in network that I didn't have for the new world I was going into. So that first year was really important to build those building blocks. Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about the first business that you had. You mentioned it was not a huge success, right? At this point, your wife is pregnant. You're leaving the beautiful paying job. You are starting something on your own, and you are so excited. You're so passionate. You're hustling. You're working day and night. You're consulting. You're doing starting night. And the first business was not a huge success. Was that a hard truth was it a hard situation? And how do you really get over that and move on to the next one? Because I think oftentimes the first failure really is very, very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs to really just get through. Like what's in your mind? What's your thought process when you're in that situation?
Yeah, it was a gut check for sure. Because really I destroyed, 2/3 of our life savings at 40 years old. And, that was not comfortable at all. I clearly there were some things that I would do differently, but there are a lot of things that we did really good too. I built a great team. That's really important. I did raise I raised a couple of million in venture capital. So I sold the idea of what we were trying to do successfully, at least to early investors. And the idea that we were trying to solve was really ahead of its time. And that's really important. And I learned that lesson too, is timing is really important. And I'd like for all entrepreneurs to really understand this. I hear this all the time, especially when I was chairman of the board of the incubator. I'd hear from entrepreneurs, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and there's nothing out there like it today. Neither of those things are ever true. It's just not that way. But innovation can come in small and medium increments. It doesn't have to come in quantum increments, right? It rarely does, in fact. But if you do have something that is quantum innovation, that means you better measure the timing of taking it to market and making sure there is a product market fit at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't the case for healthcare price transparency for consumers in 1998, 99, and 2000. It just wasn't the case. And even today, it's still problematic. I don't want to bore you with all the details around healthcare as an industry and why it's so different than all other industries. But a lot of it has to do with the consumers. The demand for healthcare doesn't drive healthcare. The supply side of healthcare drives healthcare and the cost of healthcare. So consumer price transparency is really not that important. It's getting more important after the Affordable Care Act and as things evolve over time. Anyway, I digress. But my point was that entrepreneurs really need to understand if they really do have something quantum innovation oriented, a leap, if you will, then you got to make sure that you've got enough capital to carry you to the other side where you can, as Jeffrey Moore would say, across the chasm.
Beautiful. So David, how did you, now with all the learning lessons, looking in hindsight, but at that moment, how would you take that failure? Was that an easy conversation with your wife, for example? How do you really processing it and then decide, you know what, that did not work out, let's go next thing, right? How did you have the mental adjustment?
Well, regarding my wife, being married 20 years was helpful in this situation, because we had weathered storms before. We knew how to weather a storm, and Lord knows this was a big one. For me personally, though, I took it hard in the sense of I felt like I failed my team. That really was that. I really struggled with that for a long time. At night, trying to go to bed. I was like, what could I have done differently? I just felt bad for everybody. I felt bad for me and my wife, but I felt bad really for everybody else as well. I felt bad for my investors, some of which were family members like my dad. Years later, I paid him back and some others, but that was, you felt bad for a long time. But, you just put a Band-Aid on that and you move on. I felt like if I dwelled in that failure, then, I'd let it eat me up, and there's nothing productive to come from that. So, hey, I'm a marathon runner too, or at least I used to be. And I learned that there's a real fine line between pushing through discomfort and pain that will put you on the sidelines. And so you've got to continue to push in life when you have hard knocks occur to you, whether they're self-inflicted or otherwise. You got to push through them. You got to set them aside. You got to learn from them, not repeat them, things that you would do differently. But you got to move on. So I literally wrote up a document to myself of lessons learned, and it was a ledger, positive, negatives. What did I learn from this experience? And I've used that ever since.
Wow. David, that takes tremendous courage and humanity to really look at experience and in an objective way and really say, okay, yes, I failed. How can I learn? How can I move forward? That's just incredible. And, speaking of failure, and today you are in this entrepreneur startup world for 40 years now. You've seen so many different businesses come and go. And, you and me know that statistically, most startups fails, right? And for you, you have many success right after that. I am curious, ask you regarding what made you successful after that first failure, given most startups fail, right? After that first one, you have 4 different businesses you start with. What made you successful from that moment?
What made me what?
What made you successful after the first failure? How did you stand out?
So my home run. So the first company was I was pulling the sled in the team all by myself, And
Wow.
that was one of the lessons learned that I said, I'm not going to go into the next one being the only person pulling the sled. I need co-founders that have skin in the game like me, and that also have the same work ethic as I do, the same value system that I do. You know, I have this on my LinkedIn, on my blogs that I do or post. The one that went viral last year was a topic that I feel very passionate about. And the topic is pick your partners well because you can't unpick them easily. That's true for life partners. That's true for business partners of all stripes. And so I have a litmus test for picking my partners. I'm going to come back to the topic we're talking about. And the litmus test for me is there's several things, but the main thing is how does someone treat other people when things aren't going well? Right? That's the key, because people treat other people great when things are going great, right? Everybody's happy. When things aren't going well, what's the personality traits that come out in that individual and how they treat other people? And so I teamed up with a couple of co-founders in the company that we became, our home run. That I knew that if once I got in the foxhole with these guys, I was going to be okay. And it turned out that way. And so I've made a mistake in the past. I was just a real short story. I was one of 7 organizers that we founded a bank. We raised capital and we launched the bank. This was in 2007, which was the worst timing that you could ever do something like that.
Wow.
And we had someone on the team that I short-circuited due diligence on that individual. And I had people telling me, David, do you really know this individual? And I said, I've heard some things, but I'm not worried about it. I should have been worried about it. I should have done my diligence, and I didn't, because I was so excited and interested in starting a community bank in my community and making money from it eventually. That was a bad decision, it turns out. So picking your partners is really important because you can't unpick them easily.
Wow, so it sounds like really the right team, the value, really having that synergy is really important, not only in life, your partners, but also in business. And I'm curious, today, of course, David, you've done a lot, you've seen a lot, and I'm curious, today, in this time, what does success means to you? And in that definition, are you successful?
What is my definition of success for me?
Today, okay. And with that, do you think you are successful?
Well, this is true all along through my life, and it's still true today. My definition of success for me is what value do I create for other people? People in my sphere of influence, my stakeholders from a business standpoint, my family and friends. It's not money. It's not things. It's really what value do I tell you what, I get the endorphin release, not only from athletics, sports, which, clearly, that's your primary source of it.
Yep.
But I also get it from giving back and doing the right thing. I can't tell you how many times so this goes back to Mexico City, 1987. I'm walking through the Zona Rosa and with a friend, and there's a lady, looks like she's 100 years old, but she's probably 40, sitting on the ground with 2 little kids next to a huge bank high rise. and they're homeless, and they are in terrible shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never done this before. Actually, I'm going to go back and provide a little context, but let me just finish this.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled out a wad of cash and gave it to that woman.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy thought I was nuts. He thought, why'd you do that? And I said, I don't know. It just made me feel good to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The context for that is going back 5 years previously in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm walking around during lunch downtown Birmingham, and this man got out of his car and came up to me, and he said, my wife and my children are in the car, and we're actually homeless, and I need some help. And I just walked right by him. I just kept going. And within minutes, I regretted that. And I said, I'm never going to let that happen again. And then, a few years later, I'm in Mexico City and that event occurs. So I do that for me. I'm doing it for them, but I'm really doing that gift for me because it makes me feel good. And it releases a whole bunch of endorphins.
Wow, so beautiful. I love that, today, David, for you, of course, success, like common success aside, the money, the house, all that. But at the end of the day, it's, building a community, making an impact. And really, you're just such a heart-centered, incredible, great businessman. And really not just, building something incredible that you are proud of, but just really all about community, the people, the world. It's just so, so incredible. And, I wanted to circle back in terms of the businesses. You talk about first you have failure, and then you build a team, you have home run. I wonder at that time you were building business, David, was it hard to let go? Was it hard to sell the business and move on, given that you were hoping, you hustling, right, for the success, and that is a success? Was it hard to move on from there?
It's a great question. And the answer for me was no. And the reason why is the plan was not to build. I've never been interested in building a lifestyle business or building a business with my name on the door, in the building. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not what I'm interested in. I've always built my companies with the intention of exiting and creating shareholder wealth for my shareholders, including myself. So I'm going to flip that coin over, or kind of reverse your question and say that it's not hard to let go if that's what your intention is, what I just described to you. You intend to exit. The real question, though, is when do you sell? Yeah. And so there's a saying that I like, and it's the concept of a traffic light, red, green, and yellow lights, right? You sell your company. The best time to sell the company, when I say your company, I mean the shareholders' company, right? Mm-hmm. The best time to sell is when all the lights are green, not when they're red, and not when they're going from green to yellow. Mm-hmm. But that means, and when I say all lights are green, that means financial metrics, performance, market share, et cetera. You're at the top of your game in your niche, in your space, whatever your category, and you're the prettiest girl at the dance in terms of competitors.
Yeah.
That's really when you want to sell, but that's also the hardest time to make the decision to sell, because you're going, how much more value can we eke out of this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's tough, but the home run that we had, it was we timed it right. The lights were all green, and I felt like they would start turning. Some of them would start turning yellow in a couple of years. It doesn't mean the company couldn't have made some changes and pivots and been wildly successful going forward. Mm-hmm. But I saw that on the horizon, so we decided let's go ahead and sell, and it was a good decision.
Wow, that is so incredible. And David, I feel like you just have this ability to make hard decisions. I wonder why. What made you able to be so focused and know what you want, and not only just for yourself, but really for everybody around you, the community you are building, the businesses. And how do you always just remain focused and truly make the best decision and not being influenced by the voice and things around you? Like, how do you always do that?
You know, that's a great question, and I don't know if I'm introspective enough to give you a really solid answer. But I will say, and like I said before, I'm one of seven. I'm the third oldest, and there's always one in the family that kind of ends up is helping everybody else out.
Oh, that's
And and I've been told by my siblings, several of them, that I have an intensity about me, and I have an ability to focus on things and not get distracted, which I think contributes to success because it's easy to get distracted, right? I mean, in our lives, it is easy to get distracted, especially in today's world, right? There are just so many shiny objects out there, both good shiny objects and bad shiny objects, right? And if you're trying to move forward on something, whether it's a decision to take on a venture capital partner or a decision to take on a new distribution partner or a decision to change your leadership team because they're not getting the job done, those are all big decisions. And you got to get it right. Now, you don't always get it right, but you got to try to get it right. And you're not going to get it right if you can't focus on it and really work through it. Oh, and by the way, some of the best decisions I've ever made and the hardest decisions I've ever made took time. I mean, I couldn't figure it out. And I just noodled on it. And then over days, over weeks, sometimes months, it came into view what needed to be done. And so I think that's I assume that I'm not the only one that happens to. The key point there is don't pull the trigger too quickly. Be decisive, be focused, but pull the trigger in the best possible time that you can pull it.
Incredible. And David, at this point, you have not just one career, not just two careers. You come retire off the bench and on and off. I'm curious, what drives you? What keeps you going? What inspired you? What made you want to get off the bench again and again?
I'm going to go back to those first 5 years between 15 and 20.
Okay.
I'm the same way as I was back then in terms of I have my work ethic is driven by joy. I love hard work. I just love it. And but I pick the work that I want to do and not the work that I have to do, which is very helpful, right? And so, but I mean, I do dirty work too. I mean, everybody has to. You got to do things. People like to do the things that they enjoy doing in work or life, and they avoid things that they don't like, right? That's true in business. That what you like and what you don't like when, and what happens, you tend to postpone the things that you don't like to work on, and you work on the things that you do like to work on. Well, what happens as a result of that? Some things get dropped. So it's really important, right, that we're getting psychological income from working on the things that we like working on, but we don't completely avoid those things that we need to get done. And having a strong work ethic to do that is, that's what it's all about, taking care of both sides.
Incredible. So with that though, I'm still curious. Today, what drives you besides just having fun because you love what you do? And what made you happy? What is something that really just want you to keep going, continue to make positive impact?
Yeah, I mean, I have passion for a lot of things. I have passion for my work, and I love working with entrepreneurs. I mean, that's really where I'm spending all of my time today. I've got 12 clients right now, and the variety is just so much fun. And everybody's smart, got a great work ethic. I don't take on a client that doesn't have all those values that we talked about earlier. I don't want to, don't need to. But I have passion around golf, scuba diving. I'm very passionate about those things. I go to Scotland, every couple of years to play the Holy Grail bucket list courses. My wife and I love to travel. Wow. We share so much together, and so it's not hard for me to be driven to enjoy life. It's all out there for me.
Wow. It's so amazing, David. I love that your life is not just one thing, it's very whole view. Like your plate is full in a beautiful way. I love that. And I want to ask you one last question is, today, of course, you have working with so many entrepreneurs. You see business successful, you see business, maybe not so much. I'm curious, what advice you would share with us who are maybe are watching our entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs in terms of right now, maybe in the trenches, in the grind, and really wanted to make the next home run, right? What advice, what suggestion you would share, given you so many years experience in the world that you do?
So I have experience working with startups in the incubator for years. Mm-hmm. I've been one. I have clients that are entrepreneurs, and there are traits that I see in the ones that are successful and traits in those that aren't successful.
Ooh, tell us.
And to keep this answer as brief as possible, the ones that are successful do the right level of research about their idea and how it's competitively positioned in their own mind. Mm-hmm. Number two is they know how to adapt and be flexible, mm-hmm. And not be rigid and fixed on their great idea. And mm-hmm. the latter fail 9 out of 10 times. Mm-hmm. The ones that are successful surround themselves with really bright people, mm-hmm. and that carry those traits that I just talked about. Mm-hmm. And they know how to build a team of people with all those attributes that we talked about earlier in this mm-hmm. conversation. Mm-hmm. Those people tend to be more successful than someone that feels like they've got to control, everything. Mm-hmm. They can't delegate, they can't mentor, they can't recruit. Mm-hmm. They've got a great idea in their own mind, and maybe they do. But if you don't have all those other things, you're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Being an entrepreneur isn't like tennis or golf. It's a team sport. And that's the most important thing that a successful entrepreneur understands, mm-hmm. is do your research and build a team and manage it as if it's a team sport and not an individual sport.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. Oh my God. So everybody, if right now you are starting a business, just make sure, do your due diligence, do your research, and be a good team players, be flexible, really adapt to the market, listen to your customer, and really just have a good time. And I really want to honor and thank you, Dave, for joining us and share you just such a valuable insight and experience with us. You just such an inspiration. You're such a legendary at what you do. And today I'm just so honored. Thank you for your time, your gracious, incredible story. So thank you everybody for tuning. I really hope you all enjoy as much as I do, because David is incredible. And stay tuned, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.